I'm originally from Shanghai, China. Since I started my law practice, I've been an immigration attorney, and I had the honor of, at a time during my first jobs, I started working for a lot of IT consulting companies and software development companies. So it's been I kind of been through the ups and downs of during the economic booms when everyone needs an IT guy to develop their enterprise solutions. And so I personally find it's a very inspiring experience working with a lot of IT professionals from India, how they start their business, how they build their connections, and ultimately become an essential part of corporate America. So it's such an honor to share that experience with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Next is Ms. Madhu, and would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Madhu, M-A-D-H-U. That's the easy handle to a long name. I started my career in India with a company called NIIT. And today they are one of the larger IT education and software companies with a lot of business in China. But I came here in 1991 when India was really not known as a software powerhouse. And I came here to establish NIIT in India, not so much out of any great strategic plan, but basically in India in 1990 and 91, what was happening was that there was really no foreign exchange. So the country was almost bankrupt. And NIIT was importing software from companies like Sybase and products, Power Builder and products like that at that time. And there was really no dollars to pay for it. So the chairman of the company looked at me and said, look, can you go and get some dollars from America? And that's how I came in 91 and set up NIIT here, the software business, the training business, the training products business. And then that business took off extremely well. In parallel, the Indian industry also matured very well. A lot of the old constraints went away, and India soon became, by about 96, 97, that time frame, India became a well-known entity in the software marketplace. And after that, of course, we've seen a different kind of respect for Indian software. So after that, I did mergers and acquisitions, helping this Indian group acquire companies here in the US, in the UK, in Germany, and do all of the integration with India. And that was a very enriching experience. So when I looked at it, I found also that the skill set that was required to do complex mergers and acquisitions was really not there. So I decided to form my own company, VectorSpan. And what we do is we help companies think through their growth and exit strategy, especially from a cross-border viewpoint. And we help them execute on that. So I'll be happy to share my experiences in building a software company here in Atlanta.
Thank you, Madhu. Before the next day begin to speak, let me just give you a little bit more about the format of our seminar today. As you can see, this is a panel discussion. I have a few questions. I list questions that I will ask those presenters. And then later on, I will give you time for you to ask your questions. So we'll have a Q&A session. And we'll be using English, but if you want anything, if you have questions, those young ladies, they can speak Chinese. So if you want to ask anything in Chinese, feel free. And speakers, you can feel free to answer questions in Chinese. Okay? Okay, go ahead.
I'm Lucy Liu. So basically right now, I think I'm the connection with everyone here. I'm the Vivian, we are the partner with the IHI Immigration Law Firm in Buckhead. So we are partners with the law firm. And Howard is my client. You know, we do immigration for their company. But I met with Matt in many events, you know. So one day I talked to Raymond. We talked about, you know, IT and the entrepreneur. I kind of figured out, you know, this is really good, you know, if we can pull everyone together, we can have this kind of greater event. We can share with everyone's opinion. Like I'm the Vivian, we have our legal experience. We provide our legal service to the IT company. And of course, like, you know, both of them, like, you know, have good experience in the IT consulting. So here I am. let me right now pass by to the Howard.
Thank you, Lucy. Go ahead, Howard.
So I'm Harold Ball. I am an entrepreneur, and I work very closely with people in the IT community, but I'm not an IT person per se. I do data mining and analytics. I'm trained as an econometrician. I'm on my 4th startup. I work with many people in the IT community by taking data that they have collected and prepared and aggregated in different ways, and I turn it into knowledge that my clients can use for improvements in marketing and finance and operations. And like I said, I'm on my 4th startup now, so I've been through a lot of different things in starting my own company that's very related to data mining and analytics and IT, and hopefully I'll be able to share some insights and some experiences and answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, this is just a brief introduction of all the speakers here by themselves. And after that, we'll jump into our first topic, which is outsourcing. And I will ask Madhu and Harold to give us some of their insight of how they do their business and how do they think about consulting. And you guys, each of you guys will have like 5 to 8 minutes. Okay. So go ahead and share with us your great experience. And I'll give 2 questions from the audience for each of you.
Okay. Let me begin. My first experience with outsourcing, a living example of that, was just horrible. Because I came here in, as I told you, in 1991, when the country was going through a major recession. And every radio jingle was buy Ford, buy GM, don't buy Honda, don't buy Toyota. And in that environment, especially when India was an unknown entity, I came here and I said, okay, let me go make a few sales calls and see what people can buy as outsourcing services. And I go to meetings, and of course I had a strange name, and especially in Atlanta, it was really not very foreigner aware. Forget being foreigner friendly, they had not met too many people from other countries. It was either black or white, and any other type was unknown. So it was a very strange experience for me. And the people would get into conversations about where did you learn how to speak English. And then when they heard India, you get all this questions about elephants and snakes. And at some point of time I said, look, what am I trying to sell to this market? Am I trying to sell India? Am I trying to sell that Indians can speak English? And so I stepped backwards and I said, what am I selling? What am I selling? Then I said, if I am selling a solution, which in this case happened to be either a software solution or a training solution, then I said, how does where I am from or where India is, why is it relevant? So then at one point of time, also because it was recession, I had to basically take a bold step and say, let me destroy everything that had all the Indian company details and just say, look, I'm here in Atlanta and I can provide you this kind of a service. And for me, the big differentiation was that I could boldly tell them, if you don't like the solution I give you, I'll give you your money back. And that was a very important comment of confidence for any customer. And the second part was that you don't have any surprises in the project life cycle. I will give you a weekly report which is extremely detailed. And I will slice the project into multiple deliverables so that you're never guessing as to where is the project, will we have overruns, will we have quality issues, none of that. So our first client here in town was IBM. And funnily, after a few weeks of working with them, I found that there is no way they could get an internal report on a weekly basis themselves, because they were not structured for it. There was very poor accountability in their own teams. And here I was giving them tremendous amount of accountability, tremendous amount of focus on deadlines, schedules, and suddenly they said, okay, if I have an assignment which I can give to somebody else, where I'm unsure of what I will get versus giving it to you, I will give it to you. So suddenly the loyalty with the client became extremely an important one. And these were in the days when there was really no email, and the Indian telephone service was so terrible that by the time you said hello 3 times, you were charged $5 by AT&T, and that was the conversation, that's all. So you couldn't rely on telephone, so you had to do your work through sending things by courier to India. Sometimes we had to ship hardware and software from here to India, because India did not have any of the hardware and software. It was a very complex situation. But as in 1994, India liberalized, and with the opening up of the Indian economy, one of the very important things that happened was that the traditional constraints on doing business in India completely changed, especially for software industry. Because the customs officers could not see software, they could not touch software, all the traditional export restrictions could not be applied. So companies started exporting software through telephone lines. There was nothing physical. So it just opened out a new industry which the government was completely unaware of. And a few years into the late 90s, the government suddenly found that, hey, this industry is actually very, very good for India. And they actually started supporting that industry by creating tax-free zones and special facilities for import of hardware and software. They started investing in the telecommunication industry. And that's really what developed the Indian software industry. On the other side, of course, there were very fundamental issues. And some of these issues in outsourcing had to do with basic communication. Now, India, as you know, is one of the largest English-speaking countries in the world. But the way Indians speak English is very different from how Americans speak English and how the British speak English. So when we started doing work for IBM here in town, within about a couple of months, we were actually developing training material for IBM on products like RPG and OS 400 and products like that. And we were finding that the learners were getting lost. So they would read the training material, which was in English, it was computer-based training, but they would read it and they would conclude exactly the opposite of what was intended. And so we had to figure out what was going wrong, and then, so we got a professor from the University of Michigan, who has some special skills in training and linguistics. And we got him to sit for a week at IBM, interview all the project managers, look at all the courses we had developed for IBM, and we got him to meet the team back in India. And we got him actually to construct a workshop on training these people how to write for an American audience. And there were some very interesting findings. One of them, which was his finding, was that it's not just the language. So there is a style of writing which definitely needs to change, but it's also a style of thinking that needs to change. And so he actually put together a course for us called Thinking American, Writing American. And we implemented that course within the teams. We got him to come back every month to IBM, which is our major client, and review what kind of work was going on. And there were some very, very interesting findings in terms of how people think makes such a difference in how people communicate. And then you add the communication, which is the actual language layer. Because in India, if you write complex sentences, use big words, it is a sign of intelligence, right? But when you are developing a training material, when one of the IBM project managers actually said, write to the 6th grade. The first time our team heard write to the 6th grade, they just started giggling, saying, typically they would say write better English, but here is somebody saying write lower level English, use lesser complex words, use the 6th grade vocabulary. But then we realized that that's the simplicity and the directness of communication is really what's effective, not anything else. So we had some very interesting experiences in outsourcing. And over a period of time, we learned a lot of lessons in outsourcing, especially along the people dimension. So while technology is important, as we got into more and more projects, more and more clients, one of the things we found was that as long as you have a divide and the client sees you as an offshore provider, right? There is a lot of the politics inside the organization that affects your project and your success. But the day you can change this equation into being not an offshore vendor, offshore partner, but a partner, right? Things start changing and that affects the success of the relationship. So consciously over the years, there has been tremendous amount of work the companies like NIIT have done to essentially make sure that the communication gaps, the concept of one team, these are many things that are consciously invested in, so that client teams and the vendor teams can actually act as one. And while they're inside a project, people need to forget that you belong to a different company, I belong to a different company, but the project becomes the overriding priority. And once that happens, and that can happen only through building people connections, once you do that, then the project success becomes a lot better. So these are a few examples, and during the rest of this conversation we can pick up a few more.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Madhu gave us a very insightful background of how India become such a superpower in software outsourcing and consulting. So do any of you from the panel want to ask him a question? Or do we want to let the audience ask questions?
Yeah, or all the
Okay,
audience.
I'll take questions. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, Robert.
Yeah, my question is, say if I'm starting a restaurant business consulting firm and I want to advise my client that you need to put a budget on the side, let's say for Applebee or Red Lobster. What is a reasonable budget that I should need to keep in mind, since I don't know the IT portion, to prepare for my client as an answer, like a ballpark?
Is this for outsourced software development?
No, for just like developing a website.
Okay.
And also SEO engine, internet marketing, and advertising. Yeah, those three aspects.
Okay. So SEO and those kind of things.
Yeah,
Search engine
website building,
optimization.
maintenance.
Yeah. I think it's very, today you have a wide variety of companies that provide those services, from the small boutique companies to some of the really large companies. For something like this, you would not go to the larger companies because you will not get the attention. They want to work with the larger companies themselves. So typically what we would find is that there are a lot of these companies that can actually provide this for you as an ongoing service. So if you define a period of time, define the scope, etc., you will find that the costs can be, I would say, about half of what you would find in the local market here. The Indian market has also started changing a lot in terms of their own mindsets. When all of the positioning in the early years was on a dollar per hour basis, where they would say if it's $50 an hour here, we will do it at $20 an hour. But over a period of time, all that has changed. And especially with a lot of people that are providing software as a service or application as a service or platform as a service, their pricing models are all changing. What my suggestion to you is that while you would find expectation that the budgets can be about half of what you find here in this market, the focus should be in terms of what is the quality they can deliver. How well do they understand your needs? Right? For example, can they create a quick visual prototype of what you want and get it approved? Because especially in the kind of work around web design and anything customer centric, the more they understand what your needs are right in the beginning, the easier it will be to work with them. But if you have to educate them and bring them up to speed, it just becomes a little more complicated.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you. That is a very specific question. I'm glad our member can take the chance to get some help from the
expert. Now, George, what's the question?
Sure. My question is actually both for Levin and Howard. And I was wondering, how do you pitch yourself? How do you get your foot in the door to a new customer?
How do we pitch ourselves?
Yeah. How
Okay, this for us,
yeah.
the two of
Yeah.
us. I think it's very important to understand what is important to the customer. Because how you pitch yourself at the end of the day, it has to be something which resonates as far as the customer goes. As I said, initially I used to pitch, in fact, the first experience we had in the US market was a very poor one. The company had gone to a trade show in San Antonio, and they had bought a nice big sized booth, and they had put a lot of material there, and they had put low cost as the big banner. We are a low cost company. We can cut your development costs by 60%, 70%, whatever. So they put that low cost banner, and because it was a trade show, they had to give away something to the visitors. So they gave away little Indian goddesses as idols, right? The bronze idols. And so they had, of course, about 100 people visiting the stall. So when I came to the US, they sent me the 100 names and said, we have done all your homework for you. All you have to do is to call them, and our business will really take off in America. And that was the first time I had also come into America, first time I had left India. So I came here and I started making a few phone calls. So I finally got to talk to somebody and said, we had met you in San Antonio, we are this company. So the first comment I heard was, so you are the cheap Indian company giving away goddesses. And first I didn't understand what he was trying to tell me, so I called one of the guys in India and said, what did you all do in this trade show? Because I got this comment from this person. And then this person explained that we had this huge banner which said low cost, and then we had given it. So then I sat back and I said, what is this positioning? Can I sell a service with this kind of a positioning? And I said, it makes no sense. Because here I am competing with an Accent, Arthur Anderson at that time, not Accenture, competing with them, competing with the big boys and trying to sell to companies like IBM. And I am positioning myself as a low-cost Indian company. I said, this is completely crazy. So I changed the positioning and I started positioning around the delivery time, the reporting quality, right? The money back guarantee as a way of reliability. And I said I have to compete on industry parameters, not on low cost and those kind of issues. And suddenly I found that my customers were respecting me more, and some of them were telling me, we really don't care where you do your work, as long as the work is done to this quality. And sometimes they would actually pay me more than the local vendor. So figuring out what is of value to your customer and making sure you meet it and you position along that dimension becomes more critical than what is your cost structure, all of that is not very relevant. Because going back to his question, if he had a choice between a company that understood his needs perfectly, but was charging 50% more, but would take half the time to do it, right? Versus a low-cost provider who would take 3 times, who had to do it 3 times again, etc. The equation changes. So it's very important to look at what is the client looking for.
Well, I didn't think there's two things. I agree with all that completely. You asked about how to find business essentially, and I'll just say that every really successful engagement that I've had in 21 years of consulting has been through referral. It's been through a personal referral, and I can't think of a time. As you were speaking, I was trying to think of a time where I met somebody at a trade show or I did a cold call or something like that where I didn't have a personal connection of some sort. I can't think of one where I've ever been successful in selling a project. So for me, it's always been through some sort of a personal connection where I'm referred on the way in, and people can explain to the potential client what it's like to work with our company, what our culture's like, that we're dependable, all those kinds of things. And the second thing I'll say is that we often do lose on price. We often do lose because our prices are really high, and we don't necessarily feel the pricing pressure to bring our prices down and compete on price. If any of y'all are familiar with shotgun sports like skeet and trap, a long time ago I used to do that a lot, and I had a coach, and he used to tell me that you never want to miss, you know, this little clay target that's spinning and you shoot it with a shotgun, right? You've seen this before?
Yeah.
Anybody seen it before? So my coach was the Romanian national Olympic coach, very well-regarded guy, and I was paying him a lot of money for this advice, but he told me something then, a piece of advice he gave me that carries over to my business today, and that is that I never want to miss behind the bird. So as the bird is flying, if I'm going to miss, I want to miss in front of it. And so I think about projects now. I never want to send that signal that because my price is low, the quality is going to be low. If I'm going to miss and lose a project to somebody else, I want it to be because I'm too expensive.
Great answer. Let me add go ahead. I just wanted to add another comment, which is the United States is the easiest place to do business in, right? Because I was just going back to the relationship-based comment you had. When I came here, I had no relationships. Nobody knew me. Nobody could pronounce my name, right? I have stayed in hotels where the receptionist looks at my passport and cannot figure out what is my name, and the only thing that makes any sense for her is the word "new" in New Delhi, right? And I've stayed with my first name as New and last name Delhi. Right? But I must tell you, compared to any other country in the world, I think this is the easiest country to do business. Because if you have a valid proposition, right, the walls that you have to be able to convince somebody are the thinnest walls here in this market. Right? Because when I came here, I was in a business center, I was one person. So they couldn't see any team, they couldn't interview anybody, and I was not going to write the training material. So I could only talk about it. But it still happened. And the same thing was true. We launched a software business, we launched a product business. Every one of these with zero connections. But I think it also has to do with what is the type of business you're in. If you're in a consulting type business, then it becomes a little more complex, and therefore you need that trust, etc. But if you're in a more deliverable based business where it's easy to quantify and you're willing to stick your neck out and say, look, if it doesn't work, I'm going to return your money. That's the best guarantee you can give. Then it's very easy to do business.
I completely agree with Mandy's stories about just know your customers' needs and target them properly. One of my clients, and she started as an IT manager, started with an elementary entry-level position as a programmer. And she ultimately became a project manager at Verizon. So at the time when she started the company, the way she positioned herself and targeted her biggest customer, i.e. Verizon, is that I know yourself, I know your needs. I know exactly how I can improve your efficiency and optimize your operations. So it's based on that connection and the understanding. She takes on small projects. And the lesson she told me is like excel in the small project that you get. There's no small task, including entering your names, including responding to your customers, every single request. Pay attention to details and try to excel and impress people. So she, based on that small connections, and she take over one small project, and she got referrals to other companies, and that's how she built her IT consulting business. Now she has offshore centers in Hyderabad, and 2 offices in Atlanta, Georgia. And I really believe that, you know, it's the attention to detail, customer service, and really knows the stuff that the clients need that makes her excel. And I'm sure that Mandy will talk about, this is a great country to do business. You don't have to know so many people. This is a great country but you can build a story where it's from rag to rich. And I defer to my colleague Lucy here. You know, she once told me that only in America I came here as an F1 student. Now I can have my own law firms. And the reason is that, and I hope I can speak for myself, is that when I approach a client in the legal industry, I try to be very good. I try to be quick. I try to be responsive. And like Mandu said, I let them know what a delivery time is. 2 weeks, and I try to meet in every way I can. And that impressed customers. When I started in my first jobs, most of my clients are Indian. Just like here, most of us are Chinese, and we are asking about how we can approach American customers. How can we impress them? It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter that you have an accent. It doesn't matter what you look. It's how you deliver the solutions. When I brought over my client, when I built my client base and brought it over to start working with Lucy, is because I stick to my words, and what I tell them means something, and I respond to their questions, every single thing, very quickly. That's how it all started. Even though I'm not Indian, and a lot of Indian companies at the very beginning was, you know, feel like I don't speak their dialect, I don't understand their cultures. Would I be able to deliver? And I did. So I really think that's just there's a lot of common rules to do business, and it's not specific to IT industry. It's not specific to IT solution. It's being entrepreneurs, you know, take accountabilities and own your product.
That's a very good answer, and also that's a very great question, how to get for the customer to at your door. I hope we can come back to a topic similar to this when we come to the entrepreneurship section. But now let's get back to IT and consulting. Actually, I'm very interested when Harold give us his brief introduction. He said, you're not an IT guy, but you do a lot of business that I hear similar. It seems like it is IT. So we would like to hear more about your business.
Sure. So I think there's someone that I've worked with in the past in the audience here. So there's at least one person that understands what I do. I essentially take really dirty mounds of data and turn them into information, and then transform that information into knowledge that companies can use. I work for a lot of big companies in Atlanta, like AT&T and Home Depot, Delta Airlines, Intercontinental Hotels, Orkin, Turner, and then we work with a lot of other companies around the country, like USAA and Hartford. For all of them, primarily we're looking at customer level data to try and understand customer intentions and customer behaviors. So say I'm AT&T, I've got 70 million customers. Which are my most valuable and why? Which are my most at risk and why? What can I do to try and stem customers from churning? What can I do to try and increase customer value? How can I build out my telecommunications network in a way that's efficient? How can I optimize my marketing spend across channel? These are all questions that can be answered with data mining, with a deeper understanding of customer behavior, of both business and consumer customer behavior. And it's all built on a foundation that's laid by IT professionals. It's all built on data that is cleaned and categorized and classified and put into a form that allows mathematicians and other scientists to be able to dig in and really gain insight from it.
Okay, great. I remember I heard you said you had 4 businesses before. What are they? Are they all related to what you do?
Well, yeah, the first one was when I was 19, and it has nothing to do with what I do now. But it paid for my last. Yeah, it paid for my. It was just something I happened upon in the summer between college, and I actually had 3 jobs that summer. So I was painting houses from 6 in the morning until 12 at noon, and then I had this other little company that I did for an hour and a half on my lunch break, and then I went over to St. Joseph's Hospital and worked in the supply room from 2:30 until 11. And then I met my partner for 1 hour from 11 to 12, and then I raced home to get to bed because I had to get up at 5 8:30 the next morning. But I had a really busy summer, and I ended up with him. We sold a whole bunch of wholesale items that a friend of ours had owned this service warehouse, and he was storing things for Kmart and Target and all these other companies. And half his warehouse was full of all this junk that had become his property. It was all new stuff in boxes, but it had become his property because the people didn't pay their rent. And he told us that if we could sell it, you know, he gave us a cost for each thing. We could keep what we could get for it. And I ended up making $54,000 that summer just from that business, plus the other things. And I was able to pay for my last 2 years of school and down payment on a house and all this other stuff. And I kind of got the bug for entrepreneurship. So fast forward about 6 or 7 years through a couple of jobs and through 2.5 years of PhD school. And then I decided to do it again, and I started my first analytic services company. And I had that for 5 years and sold it to a marketing agency. And then I started another one that just merged with another company, and then I'm starting another one now, actually, and I'm trying to start one in China. I'm trying to start an analytic services company that blends data mining with business strategy in China with Chinese labor to serve Chinese companies like Easyway and China Unicom and some banks. And I've got a meeting in a couple of weeks with Young Brands, the CEO of Young Brands that runs KFC and other Pizza Hut and other businesses. And so all of my work is focused around data mining. And I think part of the reason, I think I was telling somebody this earlier, part of the reason why I'm a serial entrepreneur is I don't think that I'm capable of working for anybody else. I have all these friends that get these calls from recruiters, like I'm sure all of you do, but I don't get those calls. So I kind of have to work for myself if I'm gonna earn a living, which is, you know, it's fine.
Okay. All right. Great. Anybody from the audience will have a question for Howard?
Yeah,
okay.
Actually, my question is about, you know, when you have a startup company, you start to hire people. How do you hire people? You know, I mean, you're a small company, you want to, you know, just white people.
Yeah.
You can't afford, you know, any bad people. So
right.
How do you do it?
Well, it's actually, that's a great question. It's actually really easy. It's a